Hello, good evening. Welcome to the Hill. The court cases pile up as the White House seems fed up. And is it about to be time up for the top Democrat? Plus, Tesla's up in flames as owners' names are now being dropped. That's Topping the Hill on NewsNation tonight.
Some of you know this on the iPhone. They've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping.
I think that's quite sad, but I think Governor Walz, unfortunately, is living a sad existence after his devastating defeat on November 5th.
Wow, how about that? The White House firing back as the former vice presidential candidate for the Democrats cheers on the drop in the stock price of Elon Musk's Tesla. By the way, the Trump administration says scenes like this here on your screen, Tesla's literally on fire, constitute, in their view, as domestic terrorism. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. I'll be speaking to a former FBI agent in a bit on whether that domestic terrorism label should apply. But first tonight, here from The Hill, the administration's deportation plans. Another hearing now set, as the fate of flying Tren de Aragua gang members to El Salvador still very much up in the air.
We don't have any flights planned specifically, but we will continue with the mass deportations. And I would just like to point out that the judge in this case is essentially trying to say that the president doesn't have the executive authority to deport foreign terrorists from our American soil. That is an egregious abuse of the bench.
Also tonight, Trump, Putin, Zelensky, and the future of war. A call this morning with the commander-in-chief and Ukraine's leader, just hours after another negotiation with Putin. And for Democrats in this town, questions about one of their leaders as well. The first Democrat to suggest it's time for Chuck Schumer to give up his power joins us here on the Hill later this evening. But we begin tonight over at the White House and our Kelly Meyer, and how the administration is responding to a potential roadblock once again in the courts. Kelly?
Yeah, hey there, Blake. So the White House getting an additional 24 hours to either provide more information of the deportees on those flights over the weekend to El Salvador, or decide to refuse to give that information over, claiming that it's a national security issue. You heard the president time and time again on the campaign trail and at the White House calling this an invasion at the southern border. They say this is an invasion and a security threat for the American people, these members of Tren de Aragua. So that's what I was asking, because there could be a potential hole in that argument if not everyone on those planes were actually members of that gang, therefore not a national security issue. So that's what I asked and posed to Stephen Miller today. Take a listen.
Is there going to be other evidence shown from the administration?
They're all trained in Aragua. We're not going to let anyone get raped or let anyone get murdered by terrorists.
So critics are asking for evidence here to see that. The White House has so far refused to provide that, saying this is a national security issue and this is a privacy concern. But there are folks asking for that evidence to see if there were deportees that didn't get the due process that they feel they have a right to. Levitt, as you also mentioned there in the briefing today, really slamming not only the judge in this case, but judges across the board, saying that they need to be reined in. Blake.
Our Kelly Meyer, live tonight at the White House. Kelly, thank you. The president today also speaking with the Ukrainian president, Vladimir Zelensky, as talks of a potential limited ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine continue. The White House describing the call as, quote, fantastic. They say it lasted nearly an hour.
And we're looking at a lasting ceasefire. Right now, we're at a partial ceasefire. But again, the president is sending his highly skilled, intelligent, and experienced team to Saudi Arabia later this week to continue fighting for peace in this conflict. And I would just reiterate one more time, we have never been closer to peace than we are today.
The Trump administration also now saying American ownership of Ukrainian power plants could help with the protection of that country. It comes one day after President Trump's phone call with the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. Well, in a blow to the administration, a federal judge tonight is transferring the case of Columbia University protester Mahmoud Khalil to New Jersey. The Justice Department initially tried to move the case to Louisiana, since Khalil was brought there after his arrest. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrested Khalil earlier this month. He is a permanent legal resident of the U.S. on a green card. The Trump administration now trying to revoke his green card and deport him after accusing him of engaging in quote-unquote pro-terrorist activity. Well, live look right now, Capitol Hill, where tonight there is a dilemma among Democrats. The Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is facing growing calls to step down following his vote for the House Republican-led government spending bill. The Democratic Congressman of Maryland, Glenn Ivey, now suggesting that should happen.
I respect Chuck Schumer. I think he's had a great, long-standing career. He's done a lot of great things. But I'm afraid that it may be time for the Senate Democrats to pick new leadership as we move forward.
Joe Khalil here with me now. Joe, that was a town hall just down the road from us here in one of the suburbs outside of D.C. The congressman represents Maryland. But that's a Democrat going out and saying clock's ticking essentially on Schumer.
And if you know these guys, what stands out is it's a Democrat who's very mild-mannered, who doesn't throw bombs often.
Glenn Ivey's he's going to be on this show. We talk to him all the time. You know him. He is like as even-keeled as it gets.
That is the best way to describe him. I just confirmed in the last 10 minutes, independently, Delia Ramirez, another member of Congress, did the same thing yesterday, calling for Schumer to step down. You expect it from her. Okay. You may not expect it from him. But look, I think what's going on here is the frustration you're seeing with Democratic voters, with those base voters who are showing up to town halls who say they're angry. That is not new. I was feeling that right outside the Capitol days after the Trump administration started, again, the second version of it. Right. I think it was watching Schumer and Democrats' perceived bending and sort of folding last week on that CR vote was just the easiest manifestation for that group of base voters to say, see, they're not fighting for us. They cave at the last minute. We want somebody who's a fighter. And that's why, frankly, you're seeing somebody like even Glenn Ivey get the pushback that he got at that town hall, because he took a lot of heat. So it'll be interesting. One thing I'll note is Schumer hasn't entirely lost Pelosi yet.
Not entirely.
She said,
might be getting there.
Might be getting there. You know, do you have faith in him? She said, I do. But then she went on to critique him and say, I wouldn't get something for nothing, or, you know.
Yep.
So if that shoe drops, that's obviously a significant deal.
Going to get into that later in the show with the former Battleground States Director for the Biden campaign and how there's some parallels there. Joe Khalil, thank you so much. Appreciate it. By the way, coming up here, 6:30 on the Hill, the Democratic Congressman from Maryland, Glenn Ivey, joins me live to talk about why he said what he said last night and what he faced. Some anger within his own party. 6:30 here on the Hill. All right, the Federal Reserve today revealing it is keeping interest rates steady for now. But the Fed is also projecting 2 rate cuts before the end of the year. That could lower borrowing costs and would be very welcome news for the White House. But the Fed chair also saying they are in no rush given the uncertainties around policies like trade and immigration.
We do not need to be in a hurry to adjust our policy stance, and we are well positioned to wait for greater clarity.
Now, the Fed is independent, and while the president wants rates lowered, he can't unilaterally decide how that might happen or when that could happen. Now, here's one of the reasons why we are bringing this up tonight. It is an announcement that fits into a much bigger theme for President Trump at this moment, as he is about to approach the 2-month mark of his second term. As we mentioned at the top of the show, he's awaiting legal decisions involving his deportation plans. 2 other judges, by the way, have ruled that federal workers at 19 different agencies should be back on the job. And abroad, for example, the commander-in-chief is also talking with Vladimir Putin, but no firm end in sight to the war in Ukraine. A lot of, let's kind of sit back and wait and see what comes here next. That includes, by the way, the promised tax cuts, which are now in the hands of congressional Republicans who are trying to get that legislation hammered out this summer. So where does the president go from here? I know the guy who knows a thing or two about it. Mick Mulvaney was the president's former chief of staff, NewsNation contributor as well. Hello, sir.
Hello, Berman.
So the executive orders, they came out fast, right? And the president had years and his team to sit back and say, okay, if we get this again, how do we do it? And we saw how they did it with those EOs flying out. But I'm looking at the Fed, wait and see. Putin, wait and see. Litigation, wait and see.
Yeah.
Put your chief of staff hat on for me right now with approaching the second month. Where does Donald Trump go from here?
It's all going per plan except Ukraine and Russia.
Okay.
They knew they were going to get pushback from the courts on this. They know how the system works. They know the Republicans would fight Democrats just like Democrats are fighting Republicans on policies like immigration. They knew that was going to happen. Part of the plan. Okay. The wait and see right now on the tax bill, they knew that was going to happen too. They had to clear the decks with the CR, that funding bill,
short-term funding bill,
to prevent the government shutdown last week. That had to go first. They knew the tax bill would have to go into the spring and probably into the summer. Again, per plan. The Russia thing is different. I think they really thought they might have a deal on Russia by now. I think they were a little surprised when they didn't get a full ceasefire deal here this past week. So I think, listen, in what they do for a living, the 9 out of 10 isn't bad. So I'm not saying it's a major difficulty that they had to have a deal with Russia, but I think that's the only one that sticks
If you think
out.
it's not going according to plan, you know Trump very well.
Yeah.
Where do you think this potentially heads? I know you can't get inside the mind of Vladimir Putin, but where do you think this potentially heads, and why do you think it hasn't gone according to plan?
I think you end up with a deal that everybody knows, which is that Ukraine gives up some land, Ukraine gets closer to the West, what that looks like. By the way, I think this idea about rare earth minerals, we just reported here a few minutes ago that Trump suggested that maybe if American companies own the power plants,
right,
makes them a lot less likely for Russia to attack them.
Right.
He's right about that, just like he is about rare earth minerals. If Alcoa is pulling stuff out of the ground, or American mining companies, there'll be less chance of more Russian aggression.
So here's what I'm also looking at. Tariffs, reciprocal tariffs, April 2nd. That's what, 2 weeks from now. Businesses and markets will absolutely hate that. They hate it now. They'll hate it then.
True.
Rate cuts probably later this year. We don't know, but businesses and markets would love that. They'd like to see interest rates come down. Tax cuts later this summer, probably we'll see. Again, business and markets would love that. So what's the playing field right now for President Trump?
The playing field right now, I think, is mostly tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. You worry about stuff you can affect, right? They'll talk about the Fed lowering interest rates, and yes, they want them to do it. I don't think it's as likely as even the Fed is saying, because I just think inflation is still out there. But you work on the stuff you can control, and right now they have an impact on that building, and that building needs to deliver them the tax cuts. That's, I think, the priority.
I remember Rick Scott's campaign message when he first got into politics: jobs, jobs, jobs.
Yeah.
You say tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts.
Right now, it's the next in line. It's what he promised. He wants to continue to delivering on those promises. It's going to be the priority going into the spring.
Catch you later in the show. Mick
I'll be
Mulvaney,
here, baby.
NewsNation contributor. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, still to come here on the Hill. Tesla's torched, vehicles set on fire, and yet another attack against Elon Musk's company. We are live on how the feds are fighting back on what they believe is domestic terrorism, plus Operation Stork Speed. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is now looking into baby formula, and he's tackled college and pro football games, but now the president might be wrestling with a different sport. We'll explain. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is the Center of Politics. The Hill is back in 4 minutes. I'll see you then.
Something was wrong. Then I saw my doctor and found out I have AFib. And that means there's about a 5 times greater risk of stroke. Symptoms like irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness can come and go. But if you have AFib, the risk of stroke is always there. If you have one or more symptoms, get checked out. Making that appointment can help you get ahead of stroke risk. This is no time to wait.
Tonight on Cuomo, border czar Tom Homan joins Chris live. The legal battle over deportation flights and how he's responding. Plus what he says are the next big priorities on the border. Tonight at 8/7 Central, only on NewsNation.
We certainly think it's despicable, the violence that has taken place against Tesla, the company, its employees, and also just Americans who have chosen to drive an electric vehicle. Many of them are Democrats, by the way. Democrats were big supporters of Tesla and of electric vehicles until Elon Musk decided to vote for Donald Trump. So we would like Democrats to also come out and condemn this heinous violence that we have seen.
The White House now urging Democrats, as you heard there, to condemn the attacks against Tesla facilities and vehicles, as the automaker continues to be the subject of targets. It's happening from coast to coast here all across the country. There have been incidents of arson, even shootings, vandalism as well. The FBI now investigating another attack in Las Vegas. Multiple Tesla vehicles were shot, set on fire with Molotov cocktails. The U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi now labeling the attacks against Tesla as domestic terrorism. Our Alex Capriello has been following this with the very latest. Alex?
Yeah, hey there, Blake. All across the country, we're seeing that vandalism and violence at Tesla dealerships and distribution centers. Let's take a look at some of the most highlighted cases. In Las Vegas, cars have been lit on fire. San Diego, workers were seen scrubbing off swastikas and curse words off the vehicles. And then in Portland, a hooded figure seen throwing Molotov cocktails at the cars. And police say at least 7 bullets pierced the electric vehicles. Trump's new Attorney General, Pam Bondi, promising swift action from the full force of the Justice Department, writing, quote, "The swarm of violent attacks on Tesla property is nothing short of domestic terrorism." The Attorney General announcing and adding that we will continue investigations that impose severe consequences on those involved in these attacks, including those operating behind the scenes to coordinate and fund these crimes. Musk, in the meantime, says he's being targeted by anarchists from the left who are mad at him for promoting the Trump agenda and rooting out waste and corruption across America. Take a listen.
It's really come as quite a shock to me that there's this level of really hatred and violence from the left. I think there are larger forces at work as well. I mean, I don't know who's funding it and who's coordinating it, because this is crazy. I've never seen anything like this.
And Blake, one of the latest developments, a new anonymous website has popped up which actually reveals personal information and also pinpoints the locations of both Tesla owners and dealerships. Musk says hackers are the ones who are responsible for this, and whoever runs the website says they'll be willing to take off your personal information if you are a Tesla owner, but first you got to provide proof that you've actually sold your Tesla car.
Wow. Our Alex Capriello. Live tonight, Alex, thank you. All right, so the FBI, by the way, it's on their website. We looked into it. It has a definition for what it considers to be, quote unquote, domestic terrorism. This definition has been there for a while. Let me read it to you. It's violent criminal acts committed by individuals and or groups to further ideological goals stemming from domestic influences, such as those of a political, religious, social, or environmental nature. With me now, Tracy Walder, former FBI special agent, former CIA officer, NewsNation national security contributor. Hello, Tracy. Always great to see you. So let's talk about this definition. Those are obviously criminal acts. You don't need to be a lawyer or FBI agent to know that. I'm looking at it, and it mentions political. This didn't start happening until Elon Musk backed the president and then became sort of a de facto piece of the administration and started running Doge. Is it
Yes.
domestic terrorism?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Blake. In my opinion, in short, 100%, this is domestic terrorism. Although people are upset with me for saying that, they are furthering a political ideology or a political goal, right, by trying to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, which is part of the definition. But here's the problem that I want to lay out. There are no federal domestic terrorism charging statutes. So no one can be charged with domestic terrorism. They will all be charged. That's a good question. This is something that I have actually advocated for quite some time. We obviously have foreign terrorism charging statutes on a federal level, but we do not have domestic. They have left that up to the states. So some states have them, some states do not.
Wow. So you believe it's domestic terrorism. You're a former FBI agent. If they call you up and they say, hey, Walder, we need you on the case, does that label sort of give you more resources? Does it matter, I guess, for you as an agent in one way or another? And how would you go about this?
That's actually an excellent question. It actually does matter. So when I was an agent, we actually worked these types of cases. It was actually the ELF, which is the Environmental Liberation Front, and they were setting fire to Hummer vehicles and Hummer dealerships. So this was back in the day when those were very popular because they disagreed with it. And at that time, it did afford us more resources and different technology to be able to track some of these individuals. But Teslas in and of themselves, as we know, have multiple cameras. So if anything, they're going to have a lot of information to go through in this.
You think real quickly they get down to the bottom of this? How quickly? The FBI does.
I think pretty quickly, given the amount of cameras on the vehicles and then at the dealerships themselves.
Interesting. Got to leave it there. Tracy Walder, NewsNation contributor, former FBI, former CIA. Thank you, Tracy. Talk soon.
Thank you.
You got it. All right, still much more ahead. Here on the Hill tonight, a party divided. Should Chuck Schumer step down from Senate leadership? I'll talk with one Democrat who is now front and center saying, you know what? Time might be up. And successful splashdown. You saw it live yesterday here with us on the Hill. It was remarkable watching it all. So what's happening with the astronauts now? What Elon Musk is revealing about the mission as well. We're back in a few. Welcome back to the Hill. There is news out of the White House at this moment. NewsNation is now told that President Trump is set to sign an executive order tomorrow targeting the education department. Since the president took office, staffing at the department has been cut basically in half. The president has said he wants the new education secretary, Linda McMahon, to quote unquote put herself out of a job. Tomorrow, we will get the details on how the administration plans to go about that, as NewsNation is told tonight. That executive order on the education department coming tomorrow. All right, bit of chaos outside of CIA headquarters. President Trump wrestles with a new sport and an out-of-this-world controversy. Our Hannah Brandt here with what's happening on the Hill, I guess in outer space and everything in between.
That's right, everywhere. And a dangerous situation did play out at the CIA's home base near D.C. today. Law enforcement responding to reports of an armed man lurking outside the CIA headquarters, which sent the facility into lockdown. After a standoff, the suspect surrendered to negotiators and they took him into custody. But we don't know his motives yet. Plus, President Trump, who routinely attends UFC fights, will attend a different kind of rumble this weekend. Wrestling. The president announcing plans to go watch the NCAA Wrestling Championship Finals in Philadelphia this Saturday. This comes just a few weeks after the NCAA fell in line with the president's executive order banning biological men from competing in women's sports. And Elon Musk celebrating the long-awaited return of NASA astronauts. His company, SpaceX, helped bring them back to Earth after they spent more than 9 months stuck in space. Musk saying in an interview he actually offered to bring them back months ago, but he says the Biden administration rejected that offer, saying it was for political reasons. The astronauts are now at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. They're currently recovering and will need to pass some medical exams before finally heading home. And that's what's happening on the Hill, Blake.
You know, decades from now, we'll tell our grandkids there was this thing that happened when astronauts were stuck in space. And SpaceX went up and rescued them, and they came down and they splashed down at the ocean, and then the dolphins greeted them. And they're going to be like, what are you talking about? You've lost your mind, Grandpa, right?
This doesn't make sense, Grandpa.
None of this makes
Mars,
sense. I mean, that was insane yesterday.
It was. They were supposed to be up there a week.
Yeah.
Glad they're home.
All right, Hannah Brandt, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, tonight, more calls for Senator Chuck Schumer to step down as the top Democrat in the Senate. At a passionate town hall last night in Maryland, the Congressman Glenn Ivey, Democrat, suggested to angry constituents that it could be time for Schumer to give up his 8-year run as leader.
I respect Chuck Schumer. I think he's had a great, long-standing career. He's done a lot of great things. But I'm afraid that it may be time for the Senate Democrats to pick new leadership as we move forward.
Now, after voting to approve the government funding bill that was put together by House Republicans, the anger within the Democratic Party towards Schumer has only continued to grow. Schumer canceled his book tour amid the backlash, but then made a TV appearance on the friendly set of The View, saying he ain't going anywhere.
Very good news for the residents of the District of Columbia. Strong talent in the Senate, in the House, in the governors. We have a great bench. But as for the Senate caucus, of which I'm the leader, I should be the leader.
That's what he says. Joining me now, the aforementioned Congressman Glenn Ivey, a Democrat from just down the road in Maryland, who you saw there in that video making those comments. Congressman, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. There's been a lot of talk about you in the last 24 hours or so. I noticed you said, I'm afraid it may be time. Did you leave yourself wiggle room there? Or point blank, are you saying that Schumer needs to give up his post as leader?
Well, I think I left him wiggle room. I mean, the issue really is not so much, I don't have a personal vendetta against Chuck Schumer. Really, the issue is what's he going to do going forward? We've got a lot of key issues coming up. The Medicare vote, almost $900 billion they're talking about cutting. Hopefully we'll get another crack at the CR in about 6 months. The budget resolution, reconciliation process. There's the debt ceiling. I mean, we got a lot of votes. We need to make sure that Democrats are moving in alignment now, and instead of him peeling off and going in a different direction.
So yes or no, you want him to step down?
I mean, we'll see. I want to hear what he says about what he's planning on doing going forward. Friday was a disaster. There's no question about that. It was devastating, I think, not only because of the impact it had from the constituencies and the voters like you just heard from, but also from the standpoint of, I think, passing up a chance to take a swing at the Trump administration and try and stop him on the track.
So it sounds like you're a bit TBD. Let's see where he goes going forward. There was Delia Ramirez, one of your colleagues, Democrat from Illinois, who just flat out said, yes, he should step down. You remember last year, Congressman, in the throes of the presidential race, when Nancy Pelosi went out on TV and she didn't support Joe Biden. And that basically opened the door for Democrats to say, you know what, Mr. President, get out of the race. And the reason why I bring that up is because the Congresswoman said this last night, and I want to get your reaction on the other side.
Sure.
It is about what comes next. I myself don't give away anything for nothing. And I think that's what happened the other day.
That comment right there. Is this basically 2.0, what she did to Biden last year and allowed Democrats cover to come out? Did Nancy Pelosi just give Democrats like yourself, Delia Ramirez, and many others cover to say, you know what, it's time for Schumer to give up his post?
Well, maybe. I mean, I think she went on to say a little more after that. But the point she made is the key one. You know, we gave up the leverage that we had at that moment on that bill, the continuing resolution, which is a pivotal bill for us moving forward. And he got nothing in exchange for it. So it's a big problem. Nancy Pelosi never would have done that. I definitely think she's absolutely right on that front. And that's why she was so successful as a speaker. We've got to try and replicate that. I think Hakeem Jeffries has been outstanding and, you know, following in her footsteps and did a great job last week rallying the caucus. We had 213 out of 214 Democrats voted with him in opposing the CR. We need similar sort of performance on the Senate side.
So you speak to your colleagues, obviously, right? There's 214, 13, 15, whatever the number is at this point in time, north of 210 Democratic members in the House. You speak to them. They're your colleagues. They're your friends. How many more Glenn Ivies are out there right now, Congressman, that you know of and that you think might be out there in terms of Chuck Schumer and your position?
You know, I'm not sure. And you know, I think the fact that Schumer and Hakeem had a meeting where, you know, at least they had a conversation about, you know, what happened last week and how to go forward. I don't know what's been disclosed about that. I haven't heard any details, but that might have helped. But the bottom line is, I mean, we really need him to get on the same page. I mean, as you heard from not only my town hall meeting, but other across the country, and you've seen them in polls, people want Democrats want the Democrats in Congress to get their act together. We need to get on the same page and have a strategy in the House and the Senate that's coordinated and effective. And we didn't have that last week.
All right, we'll leave it there. Fascinating. Congressman Glenn Ivey, he's a frequent guest here on the Hill and in the middle of a lot of news. And you just heard some of it there. Congressman, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Talk soon.
Thank you.
You got it. All right, joining me now, man who has the pulse of what it is like at the top ranks of the Democratic Party, Dan Cannonen, is the former Battleground States Director for both the Biden and Harris campaigns. Hello, sir.
Hi, Blake. How are you?
Pelosi 2.0?
Well, maybe.
So what happened last year with Biden, how she basically blew the doors open and allowed Democrats to say, Mr. President, you got to go. Is that what's happening right now?
A slightly different version of this.
Okay, tell me.
She did the same thing in some ways. You may remember, she never said Joe Biden should step down.
Right.
She just cracked the door and said, you know, if the president should think about this.
Right.
And that was enough at that moment for folks to come and pile on. Now, what's different about that and now is that Biden had a very time-bound decision to make.
Right.
There was an election, and there was a convention steamrolling ahead, and everyone understood that pressure was there. It was ratcheting, and one way or the other, that was going to get resolved, and it was, right? In this case, Chuck Schumer does not have that same time-bound pressure. There are a few moments on the horizon, the CR, you know, the rest of the fights happening, the debt limit perhaps, where he could rally his caucus and show some strength, and that could help him. And he's not up until 2028.
Right.
So he
That's a long ways away.
It's a long ways away.
Yeah.
So he could survive this.
Okay.
But I think what you're seeing from Mr. Ivey is a very real and palpable frustration that the leader was not on the same page as Hakeem Jeffries, that whether you agree with his decision or not, it did not look like it was managed very well.
Right.
And Democrats and folks on the ground want a fight. They want someone to go after Donald Trump. They want to be effective.
They want to fight. How many more Glenn Ivies are out there, do you think?
I think saying what he just said A lot.
Which was, so he just went up to the line but didn't go there. Basically saying, I'm at the line, I want to hear more. You have Delia Ramirez, who came out just moments ago and said, yes, he's got to go. How many do you think are at the, he's got to go, I'm just not willing to say it publicly yet?
I think the Glenn Ivey piece is most of the caucus.
Wow,
I think the Delia Ramirez piece is maybe a smaller number, but he's got a few moments to prove himself. I will say this for Chuck Schumer, he's won seats, tough elections, Wisconsin, Arizona, the tough races that were close. Senate Democrats prevailed. He's been effective as leader, but people just want action right now.
All right, we'll leave it there. Dan Cannon, back on the other side of the break.
See you then.
Thank you, sir. Coming up, a bold prediction for the 2028 presidential race.
We've got him now. He's on fire, and I'm a huge supporter. Want to see him again in 2028.
That, of course, Steve Bannon suggesting last night here on NewsNation to Chris Cuomo that the president will run for a third term. What's that all about? When we return on the other side of the break here on The Hill.
Tonight on Cuomo, border czar Tom Homan joins Chris live. The legal battle over deportation flights and how he's responding. Plus what he says are the next big priorities on the border. Tonight at 8/7 Central, only on NewsNation. Tom Homan joins Chris live. The legal battle over deportation flights and how he's responding. Plus what he says are the next big priorities on the border. Tonight at 8/7 Central, only on NewsNation.
I'm a firm believer that President Trump will run and win again in 2028. So I've already endorsed President Trump. A man like this comes along once every century if we're lucky. We've got him now. He's on fire, and I'm a huge supporter. Want to see him again in 2028.
You know he's term limited. How do you think he gets another term?
We're working on it. I think we'll have a couple of alternatives. Let's say that.
All right. That, of course, the former Trump advisor Steve Bannon on NewsNation making the case for a third term and seeming to not let the Constitution stand in his way. The 22nd Amendment pretty clear on the issue, quote, no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. Now, just a month ago, the president teased the idea of a third term during a White House event.
Should I run again? You tell me. There's your controversy right there. There's your controversy.
All right, full panel here with me now. Mick Mulvaney, NewsNation contributor, former chief of staff in the first Trump administration. Michael Schnell, congressional reporter for The Hill. Alex Gangitano, White House correspondent for The Hill. Dan Cannon, back with me as well, former Battleground States director for the Biden and Harris campaigns. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here. What's going on, sir?
I have no idea. You asked me what Bannon is thinking. I haven't known what Steve Bannon is thinking for the last 8 years. President Trump is constitutionally ineligible to serve another term. Now, I've heard all sorts of conspiracy theories that he's going to run for vice president, and then the president, whoever would win, would step down. He could get to be president again because then he's technically not elected. Listen, you can stay up all night on the internet doing this stuff. I just think Bannon is trolling the left, and I think so is Trump.
You think this is just pure trolling?
Well, with Bannon, you never can tell if he's serious or not. I think Trump is just trolling the left.
It's trolling. I do wonder part of this is also Trump trying to get a little bit of leverage here. He doesn't want to be a lame duck president, but Mick is absolutely right.
Who would the leverage be on? Because there is that thinking, because he is a lame duck president.
He is, but he still has authority. He's still got power in Republican primaries, which is so he's a lame duck, but he's not going anywhere.
He's got that. And I think he wants to keep his base active and engaged in politics overall. But Mick is absolutely right. There's no path for this. Although I will say, like, his continued flaunting of the law on whether it's asking for judges to be impeached does raise the question of if he's successful in going further and further over the line, do they think about this more seriously later? I don't think they do, but you never know.
You're at the White House every single day. What do you think Trump's, or what do you think the allies here, at least in this case, Steve Bannon, are trying to do?
I think they want to keep everything on the table, and the fact that Bannon's saying we're figuring that out, we're looking at that. I think they just don't want to close the door on any idea, and if they can figure out some loophole, some way, some conspiracy theory that turns into a real strategy. He also, I think, wants to be the relevant, non-lame duck president, and of course, they love that he is he will handpick his successor, and that's what really matters.
It could be theorizing, it could be sort of dangling this bone, but lawmakers on Capitol Hill, Republicans, are amped up about this.
Right.
Congressman Andy Ogles, he's a Republican from Tennessee. He's actually introduced a constitutional amendment to try and change the Constitution, the 22nd Amendment, to let President Trump run for a third term and win a third term. So it may be, the show on his side, but
that's the right way to do it. That's the right way to do it. That's the constitutionally approved way to do it. It's never going to happen. It's never going to pass, but that's the right way to do it. You don't do it the way Bannon does. Say, we're looking for loopholes. You'd go out and introduce a piece of legislation and see what happens.
All right. Meantime, while a third Trump term, it could be litigated. We'll see. A second term has already been defined in part by the other big name in the administration, Elon Musk. And Tesla, his biggest company, have now become a political hot button as well.
I know some of you know this on the iPhone. They've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping.
I think that's quite sad, but I think Governor Walz, unfortunately, is living a sad existence after his devastating defeat on November 5th.
So that was Tim Walz, the former vice presidential candidate. The White House today responding to that. The governor currently from Minnesota well. Should they be rooting for an American company like that it's been wiped 50%, give or take, whatever the day is in value in the recent months. You rooting for Tesla stock to drop?
I think Elon Musk is so, inexorably identified with Tesla. It is a company that is him. That's how he presents it. And I think this is just the outrage people are feeling. I want to direct it somewhere at him. This is how you think you can hurt him. But Blake,
but there's also crimes here being committed.
Let me be clear about that. Okay. Everyone should say, and I will say this right now, that any crime, any violence should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. It should not be tolerated, left or right. Get that out of here. But rooting for the stock in kind of a comical way to go down is sort of taking a shot at Elon Musk. It's not asking for violence. It's a very different thing, and we should be very clear about it.
So Republicans were none too thrilled with Bud Light, none too thrilled with Target. The president once called for a boycott of Goodyear. Obviously, the difference here are the crimes. Yeah. And we heard Tracy Walder say, this is domestic terrorism.
Domestic terrorism, absolutely. I'm coming back to a theme we've come to regularly on this show, which is that I like my humor without the politics in it. I don't like politics in everything. I actually think Tim was just trying to be funny.
So you're going to his side here. You're taking Tim Walz's side?
I'm not defending. I didn't think it was funny. I think he was just trying to be funny. I don't think he's out there making a political statement. And it might be nice for politicians to be able to say something in this country and not have it be political all the time.
By the way, we looked into it. There are lawmakers, Michael. You cover the Hill.
I do.
Josh Gottheimer, Democrat. This is according to Quantitative Quiver. Been trading Tesla, 4 trades since January. Julie Johnson, Democrat, sold Tesla in February. Gottheimer sold in February as well. Gilbert Cisneros, Democrat, bought Tesla in February. Marjorie Taylor Greene bought Tesla in March. They're buying and selling the stock, some of them.
Could beg the question and reinvigorate the push of banning lawmakers from trading stocks up on Capitol Hill, which is sort of always the bipartisan push. You see it every year, and it doesn't really ever pick up steam. But, going back to the whole Tim Walz thing, we're still in the conversation about Democrats soul searching and who that next leader of the Democratic Party is. Everyone's trying their own tactics, throwing anything against the wall to see what sticks. I will say, we're talking about Tim Walz right now. He, of course, had that moment where he became the VP candidate. Maybe he wants to be the one to carry the mantle, so could see this sort of messaging attempt.
How many people here think Tim Walz is the next standard bearer for the Democrat Party?
That's this guy.
I think Tim Walz is excellent.
And I like Tim Walz. You know that I do, but
yes,
I don't.
And the whole point here is he's speaking like a normal person, right? Like, we're all parsing this and putting a political lens on it, to your point, Mick, and trying to, carve out what he said and what it really means. The average person hears that, sees he's making a joke. It connects to what they're thinking and feeling. He's being real. I think there's a real need for that currency in Democratic politics.
It's very Tim Walz of him to make a comment like that. He's just, he likes being, the everyman on the stage, and that's kind of what's his thing of why he was the running mate. But I also think Elon Musk has become such a boogeyman that Democrats want to lean into this and lean into any way they can hit Elon Musk. It's not fun anymore to come after just the president. You get to come after Elon Musk too, and that's where the Democrats are going here.
By the way, Jimmy Kimmel last night, he was doing a little bit on Musk and talked about Tesla. Here's what happened late night last night.
Our co-president, Elon Musk, sent a SpaceX vehicle to bring the astronauts back, and when they landed, he fired them immediately upon landing. Tesla stock is way down, almost disastrously so.
So that's the thing. There's a good portion of this country right now who's rooting for it to fail. And I just wonder, Dan, when that needs to stop.
I drive a Tesla.
Okay, there you go. Attaboy.
But.
Comma but?
But, no, tell him but.
I've got the anti-Elon sticker on my car, and I'm going to buy Rivian as soon as I can because I don't want to be associated with it any longer. But having said that, I can go in the Wayback Machine and say Tesla did a great job of making electric vehicles cool, effective, good cars, and drove us into a place where infrastructure was there for EVs. I'm happy about that. I just wish he would get out of the company, or even better, get out of the federal government and go back to running the company so that could be an improved product.
All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Blake.
Stuff. Yep, you got it. Other side of the break. Does Prince Harry have his own knight in shining armor? The new drama over his immigration papers, and why RFK Jr.'s new target is baby formula. I'll explain. And coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, the White House releases the final JFK documents, but is a potential bombshell being withheld? Find out what it could be coming up at 7. I'll see you on the other side of the break. Harry's status in the U.S. back in the spotlight. His visa application records were released by the Department of Homeland Security. Now, the department says the records are heavily redacted due to privacy and security concerns, including potential harassment and contact by the media. The Heritage Foundation, which is a big-time conservative think tank in this town, filed a Freedom of Information Act request alleging Prince Harry did not share his drug use on his visa application, or at least they wanted to find out if he did. The Duke of Sussex confessed to his drug use in his memoir, Spare. All right, my take now. At this time yesterday, we had just witnessed 2 stranded astronauts return back here to planet Earth with the help of a private American company. And oh, by the way, as all of that was unfolding, the John F. Kennedy assassination files also released at the same time. Now, lost in all that history, both past and present, a different Kennedy. The HHS Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., revealing he met with the heads of the companies that make baby formula. And he announced the formation of what's now known as Operation Stork Speed, which could change how formula is tested. The secretary saying in a statement, quote, "The FDA will use all resources and authorities at its disposal to make sure infant formula products are safe and wholesome for the families and children who rely on them." Now, before we go any further, it's important to note, I ain't a pediatrician. Neither is the HHS secretary, and nor are 99% of you watching. And yes, I am very well aware that there are many feelings about RFK Jr., those rooting him on and those who have big concerns. Now, HHS did not give a definitive timeline on when any baby formula changes could come and what they might be, if at all. RFK Jr., by the way, we should also note, met with the big food companies last week. So it's pretty clear right out the gate that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is trying to enact change. What will happen with all of this, we will all see. But for now, the phase we seem to be watching are the baby steps. And that's my take. I'm Blake Berman. Hope you have a great night. I'll see you back here tomorrow.